So hello and welcome to Inspiring Interviews, Conversations about Breath. My name's Benedict Beaumont. I'm from Breathing Space School of Breathwork. And in this space, each week I interview a well-known breathwork facilitator or an inspirational leader to find out about their journey, to find out how they stepped into their power, to find out how they became the awesome person that they are now, and how they transform other people's lives by hearing about their own journey. We will be taking some breaths together. We will be finding out about who inspired Julie Ann along her journey. Because today I am indeed joined by Julie Ann Horrox from Love in the Breath. Now, before I do this interview, I always ask my interviewee, my guest, to ask them what would they like to be read out about them. So this is what Julie Ann said. So Julie Ann is a certified transformational breath facilitator and a group leader with over 20 years of experience of conscious breathwork. She organises the personal and professional training programme in Glastonbury, and she has travelled the world as a member of the International Breathwork Foundation, and she works for the prestigious Origo programme in Somerset and London. She was a founding member of breathingcircle.org and runs monthly circles in Glastonbury and Bristol, as well as running regular clinics and workshops in the Southwest and South Wales. But this is the bit that I'm really interested in. I want to know about her Northern working class Church of England roots and how God comes into breathwork, and how she found breathwork in a magical synchronicity in 2000, and then her transition from being a rebirther to being a transformational breathworker. So in terms of breathworkers, Julie Ann is one of the big hitters. She's one of the big cheeses. She's one of the movers and shakers in the breathwork world. So I feel very honoured to have you here, Julie Ann. Thank you for agreeing to come on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah. Wow, sounds amazing when you say all that. Yeah.
So I always like to start these interviews if we can just take a breath together. And if you're watching this either live on Facebook or on YouTube a little bit later, I really encourage you to join in with us and to really connect with us both just by taking a breath together right now. Let's do that. That feels better, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get started. So there's a little bit about you, Julie Ann. But what do you think are the most important things that people should know about you? What is your 101, if you like? What are the important things about you? I'm going to give you 90 seconds maybe for you to deliver as many facts, and it could be something simple like where you live and, you know,
Okay.
what your life looks like right now under the pandemic, but it could be other things as well. It could be about your personality, whatever. We'll go through in more detail through your life, but 90 seconds. Julie Ann Horrox, 101, off you go.
Okay. I can't remember what the question was.
90 seconds of details about your life.
Oh, details about my life. Okay. So I grew up in Macclesfield, and in a very working class environment, quite suppressed in a lot of ways, quite Christian, and was always a bit cheeky. And yeah, now I live in Glastonbury. I have to pinch myself to think, oh my God, am I actually living here and working here? From a very hard working background where you had to work hard to, you know, to get anywhere, I have shifted into doing what I love, to helping people, and yeah, my life has really transformed with the breath. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Well, that's a great start, and I'm hearing now you're living in magical Glastonbury, which is just an astonishing place to be. And there's a lot of breath work around Glastonbury as well. I think I know 4 or 5 different facilitators around there. So, you know, and I've run retreats there as well. I know what a special place it is there. So lovely that you're in such a magical place. And I'm hearing about your childhood and your background growing up in Macclesfield in a, a religious background and a very hard-working background as well. So I think maybe we'll start there.
Yeah.
Now, what I do with these interviews, I really want to inspire people around breathwork. It is my passion and my profession. And I find the best way to do that is, the most inspiring thing for me is to hear people's stories. And that isn't always the kind of the glossy shop front, the kind of the amazing things that they've done. What really inspires me is hearing about the challenges that people have gone through the longer dark nights of the soul, and how they have helped, the guests step up, and how that helps them transformed and to become the most amazing catalyst for other people's transformations as well. So, Julie Ann, I invite you to go to the tender places. I invite you to be really real and honest and speak the truth, because that's what will inspire other people's. So I hope that's okay. I hope that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's start with little Julie Ann in Macclesfield. When you were little, tell us about little Julie Ann and what her life was like. Paint us a picture.
Yeah, so I've actually, she's my profile picture at the moment, because I visited my sister and we went through old photographs. So little Julie Ann's very much, well, always is, because our inner child's always with us, aren't they? So what my passion was, and I think what got me through as a really little Julie Ann was watching black and white movies. I wanted to be dancing on the stage like Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire. And actually one of my breath teachers was on stage with Ginger Rogers. So that, just shows you the synchronicity that has happened in my life. That's been amazing. I think that little Julie Ann was, didn't know who she was at all. I grew up in a very working class, big family. Like we all lived in Macclesfield, everybody knew one another, and in that way it felt very safe. If I ever had visitors as a teenager and walked up the high street in Macclesfield, like, hi, it's a bit like Glastonbury, really. Very small town. So in that way, quite safe. My grandparents spent a lot of time, in fact, I was brought up by my grandma because my mum was very young and at work. So in that way, there was safety, but I wasn't able to express who I was because of just the generations, and that's how it was. And especially in the north, it's very sort of fear and church, and you have to behave yourself and be a good girl. And I was Girl Guides and Sunday school teacher and followed that road. And I escaped. So I think I wanted to be I always wanted to be an actor. And so I'd watch these movies and I would dance and I would sing and I'd go off in a fantasy world. I think that's how I survived. And actually now looking back in hindsight, I think that really what I wanted to do as an actress was to be able to just cry and feel my grief and feel my pain, and to be able to scream and go, really get in touch with my emotions, which wasn't okay, wasn't allowed. So, I survived going off into this fantasy and drama of watching black and white movies, and
that's a really powerful image, and I love that. So like on one hand you've got the close community, you've got a village there of of parents and grandparents and
aunts and uncles and like lots.
But then there's also that side of you that wasn't met, that side that wanted to express, and maybe you found that out in movies. So tell me a little bit more about your family, and you know, you've mentioned that there, you know, I can imagine that kind of community, that kind of northern working class community, how
Oh,
tremendously like supportive
mate.
it is, but then also that inability to communicate and express. So maybe tell us a little bit more about your family and the environment, and you know how that was challenging for little Julie Ann.
Yeah, so yeah, that you've just sent me on the journey in my head there to like my one set of my grandparents. They had a shop, and they had a shop on Buxton Road, and it was a sweet shop, and they knew everybody. And you'd go out the back of their shop, and it was proper back to backs, you know. And you could go and borrow a cup of sugar. You could, you know, I'd get left with neighbours. It was like when we go to India and we go, wow, you've got that community. They had that still. I was born in 1965.
Mm-hmm.
So you still had that real community. You'd leave your door open. Even now I'm like, why do people knock on the door? If they're my friends, why don't they just come in? Like, I think that's really weird. Just come in, you know. So, but it was very safe, you know, very safe like that. And then my other grandparents, my grandfather was from Sheffield, from mining family. All my family, in fact, my family ancestors were weavers in Manchester back to like 1750. So strong women, outspoken. Everybody had a strong opinion. So it was like, yeah, growing up with a lot of opinions and a lot. Everyone was always fighting and shouting, and you know that was quite normal. So remind me what the question was.
Okay, no, I think that's great. So that rough and tumble household that you have.
Yeah.
So
But in that, my mother trying to be very aspiring to be middle class and ladder climbing, you know, that as well, because she, you know, and both my parents, they really wanted to get out of where they were in, you know, relative poverty and not having very, it was always a struggle, but they were very aspiring to be something better, you know, taking us on holiday to the south of France. We'd go to Saint-Tropez and go, oh look, we've got a boat in Saint-Tropez, and it'd be a you know, really aspiring, taking us on amazing holidays and yeah, traveling over the Alps, and you know, but we'd be sleeping in an orchard in a tent just to take us out and experience a different, to give me and my sister the inspiration to move up the ladder and be something better. That was their aspiration, you know. So
that's quite a gift to give, but then that also does come with challenges as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because it can be very displacing, can't it?
Yeah. My mother always wanted me to marry a doctor, or, you know, tell me what, you know, they tell me what they think I should do. So, yeah, I think she's let go of that now.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe let's just talk about who was the big influences on your life. Who are the people that inspired you, or inspired little Julie Ann? Who are the big figures in their lives? You know, I like to bring in people who had a big influence on our guests. Who would you like to bring in at this stage?
As a child?
Yeah.
So my auntie Mildred was, she was really supportive and a bit cheeky and a bit naughty. You know, she'd give me brandy on my cakes, and she'd take me to the theatre in London and open my mind, because my parents weren't very academic, but she would really, she married a more wealthy mill owner, and so yeah, she really inspired me to help me with my homework, because I was also very dyslexic. I didn't realise that until I was almost 30. I didn't realise I was dyslexic. So she would help me with my homework and take me on these trips to London. So she was a great
And was she a real auntie, or she was just a sort of friend?
She was my real auntie. She was my granddad's sister. Yeah, in fact, yes.
And what did Auntie Mildred look like?
Oh, she was, always very glamorous, you know, always had a lipstick on and a bit of a turban. She was a bit eccentric. and had a beautiful like 1920s house, you know, really, really good, with old furniture and lovely things, and yeah, a beautiful garden, and was very open-minded, very, very open-minded, like sexually, and you know, she was great. So I like spending time with her. Yeah.
And well, to have someone like that who may be in a slightly different social class, and you know, someone who can take you to places, that must have been a magical experience for little Julie Ann.
Yeah, well, that was more when I was a teenager. I think a lot of the time through my younger childhood, I think that's when I was maybe, you know, work at school was a bit more serious, and they could see I was behind, that I started to go and I'd cycle to her house, and
She almost had she almost had like an official mentor role to you, given
yeah, absolutely.
she took you on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think she felt a lot better about herself. So I remember one day a car driving down the road, and somebody beeping and winking or something, and she went, yeah, she is, isn't she, you know. I was like, oh, that's, you know, to actually be given a compliment instead of being you know, more criticized. Yeah, so I liked her. Yeah,
She sounds like quite a character.
was a really, really a character. Yeah.
So let's have a breath with Auntie Mildred to really acknowledge her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is there anyone else from your childhood, and it could be a school teacher, someone who inspired you at school, or someone outside of school, or even maybe from when you were younger, someone who inspired you for another reason that you would like to talk about here?
Yeah, Mr. Maxwell at school, and because he was such a dedicated Christian, that he'd lived in Africa as a, I don't know what he was doing exactly, but he'd like, you know, given up having a bit, whereas my parents were aspiring always to be climbing the ladder and having a bigger house, and he'd just given that all up, and being in service to humanity, I suppose that was the inspiration. And he lived in Africa, and I don't know whether he taught, or I think it was a bit missionary, but nevertheless he'd given up to really help people who needed it. So that was a great, and he was also a fantastic art teacher, and art and PE were the only things I ever got A's in. So yeah, I really liked Mr. Maxwell for that side of him. Yeah.
And what did he look like, so we can have a picture of him in our heads?
Quite short and dark, actually, and yeah, a little bit. I went to a very Catholic school, so he was a little bit more rebellious, I suppose. I mean, none of the
teachers always are. They're allowed to have the radio on.
He had a bit more of an had a bit more of an interesting life than everybody else. Yeah, that he travelled. So it's the travel thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's have a breath with Mr. Maxwell as well then. Thank you. Now, you've mentioned this a couple of times, actually, your kind of Christian upbringing and that influence in your life, you know, and I know that it will echo as we go through your life. So maybe tell us about what religion or spirituality was like, you know, maybe growing up when you were a small child, but also when you were growing through your teenage years as well. What was religion, and what was spirituality, and what was that non-material world like for Julie Ann?
Yeah. So I think this stood me in such good stead when I went through my, you know, darker parts of my life later on. The fact that I had that really strong connection to the divine, even though it was, you know, Christian and all the trappings and the confusion about that. But nevertheless, going to church every single week. My grandma was a Sunday school teacher. We used to walk from her. We often stayed at her house on Saturday night when Mum and Dad went out, and then we'd walk.
Yeah.
Actually, in Macclesfield, there are 108 steps.
Yeah.
So we used to walk up the 108
That's
steps.
a good number, isn't it?
Know the symbology of the 108
Yeah.
now. Because, I was reminded of that when I went to Babaji's ashram and went, oh yeah. So we used to walk up the 108 steps, which was a ritual in itself, to go to church. Like, it was St. George's Day a few days ago, and as a little girl I'd be dressed up, and we'd flower sermons and marching with guides with the church. So it was church, and that community was, yeah, that was very much my community, my family, and a belief, really, really strong belief in God, in the power of prayer, and that celebration. You know, I used to go to St. Michael's Church in Macclesfield, which is a really big church right in the middle of town, and the organ and the music and the sound and the celebration of life. When I actually, you know, turned against that as a, you know, became a yuppie and went off and did something else, I sort of missed that. Celebration, the blessing, the thanksgiving, you know, and really following the wheel of the year, which we know now is actually more pagan, going through all those festivals and the flower sermons of springtime and the harvest festival, and that. And I spent a lot of time in nature. You know, my dad would take me out walking, me and my sister, at like 5 in the morning. So I'd go and spend time in nature and then go to church. So I had 2 churches running simultaneously. And the love of nature and the love of that divine connection, yeah, really strong.
So what I'm hearing here is there's what that gave you was an awareness or a comfort in a few things. So first of all, community, and how community can be built around something that is non-material, about it's greater than just us, and how important that is, and how meaningful that is, you know, to young Julie and to everyone now. I'm also hearing about your familiarity and your comfort with that awe, that feeling of awe and like magnificence that you get with, you know, that kind of religion, the kind of the big churches and the organ and the music, and how inspiring that can really be as well.
Yeah.
And then also the ritual and the mystery around it, the kind of, you know, the cycle of events and the different days and the different festivals, and how important ritual is, and that kind of that cyclical nature of ritual, I suppose it is really, and how important that is in our life.
Yeah, prayer and worship and all of that. And that had been in my, you know, my family. My grandma and granddad met through Sunday school. They were both teachers at the parish church. And yeah, my mum and dad met through scouting and guiding, which has also got, you know, quite a religious background. My grandfather was a choir boy. My grandfather was a lay person, you know, one of the people who collect the money. My other grandma did the flowers in St. George's Church. It was like church was a really big part of life, and that, yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting to hear, and I'm sure that will resonate for many people who have had a religious upbringing. And for many, it's easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a lot to reject, and there's a lot to kind of that is wrong with it. But then some of the gifts that you get from having that exposure to that kind of world that is just bigger than the material one is a really powerful, profound thing to have.
Yeah, it is. I think that stood me in a lot of good stead. My dad was the only one who would fight with everybody. He was really funny. He was really a character. He'd be like, God made the world in 6 days. They must think I'm bloody daft. So, you know, he had really seen through the church stuff And he did throw the baby out with the bathwater, but his God was, he was a shaman, really. He loved nature. We used to go stalking the deer, and we'd go caravanning and camping. And so, yeah. And his favourite place in the world was Sedona, but he didn't believe in anything spiritual, but he did on a level. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on from, you know, your childhood there, and then let's talk about when you started to become an adult and you started to maybe move away from Macclesfield and your home and your community, your village, if you like. Tell us about that stage in your life.
Yeah, so I actually didn't move out of home until I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
And I trained in fashion. Actually, I wasn't allowed to. I really wanted to go to drama school, but my family had really put me off that. So I trained in fashion. My mum was a fashion designer. I didn't think I was very bright because I was dyslexic, so I wasn't great academically. So I studied fashion actually at Salford, which is in Manchester. And then I got my first job working for Next just after my 21st birthday, and got bought a little old banger for my 21st, and went to Next to work for Next when it first set up with George Davis, who George Davis and his whole team came from. They'd been running Pippa D, and interestingly, my mum used to work for Pippa D as a children's wear designer. So they bought out the Hepworth group, and so they just started. They'd only been going for probably even 6 months, and I joined the buying team as a junior buyer for Next. Yeah.
Okay, and so did you move out of Macclesfield, or did you?
So I moved out of Macclesfield, and I moved to Leicester and had to make, I had to like completely make new friendships. So then I became quite a yuppie, really, but I really wasn't happy during that time. It was a lot of drinking, a lot of sleeping around, and just going out and getting really hammered, and then work, just getting on with work. I wasn't really happy at all during that period. Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, it feels like this kind of move, out to being a yuppie, as you say, to kind of a professional environment, to a new city. That must have been a big thing for your family as well, because it seems like that was the trajectory into socially moving up in the world.
Oh yeah, I was doing the right thing as far as they were really proud of me. I'd actually got a job at Next, because Next became, Next was the first company that George Davis was really good mates with Terence Conran. So never before at a fashion shop coordinated hats, shirts, jewelry, socks, boots, coats. It hadn't happened before, so it was a really big thing. So yeah, they were really proud of me that I'd done that, but it was all about the ladder climbing and the success. I never once got asked, how do you feel? I remember coming to Glastonbury for the first time like more than 20 years ago, and actually then even being terrified when people asked me how did I feel. Yeah, so that was never on the radar, was it? It was just all about what everything looks like and where you're going, rather than are you happy and how do you feel. Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'm feeling that a materially very successful young woman here, young Julie Ann, really making a way in the world, but already noticing that maybe it wasn't actually fulfilling her on every level that she needed. So actually, let's just pause here for a second. Is there anyone from this period in your life who was an inspiration to you, that supported you, or you would just like to mention here, who was an important influence on your life? And it's fine if there isn't anyone at this point.
There's a friend, Sally, who I lived with, who had ME, and we had a really close connection. I've lost touch with her, and yeah. Oh, I feel really sad, actually, but I don't know where she is. Yeah. So, yeah, Sally, we were just like sisters. So it was almost like we were in this world where it was all quite harsh and crazy, and but we shared a flat together. So that's just, yeah, just a bit of sweetness, you know, me and her, like sweet sisterhood. Yeah. So that, yeah, that was a real beauty. But I don't think there was anybody, because they were all fashion, hard faced, you know. It was like there weren't, that world was, yeah, you know, I survived in it because I thought that's what I should be doing, but actually I was too sensitive. That wasn't the world that I was meant to be in, you know. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's have a breath with Sally and that little moment of sweetness and sisterhood.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are other people who remember that period when they were young, you know, in a flat and in a social when they're becoming an adult, and yet they still have those kind of friendships. So, yeah, I certainly resonate with that, and I'm sure other people will as well. Yeah. Let's have a breath, Sally.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing her in that angle. So what happened next then? How did how did Julie Ann kind of break out of that world, and where did it take her next?
I think, yeah, I moved back to my hometown and bought a house, and spent a lot of my time like doing my house up and in and out of various relationships. Had a lovely boyfriend. I just fucked up really good relationships, really, because I was playing out all my unconscious patterns, you know, pushing people away when I really loved them, and you know, all that stuff, really going through that confusion. And anyway, I got married. I ended up, yeah, getting married in 1990, and I lived in this lovely little village, quite idyllic, but I still really wasn't happy. So I think when things really shifted was by marrying this guy who was a Freemason and was quite a screwed up family, and that made me question, how can people behave like this? How can people, you know, treat me like that? And started to get a bit more self-conscious, really started to really wake up my feelings and emotions. And actually when we went through the divorce, I think we were together like 3 years, and we have a daughter. That's my eldest daughter, Georgie. Yeah, when we went through that divorce, which was a real, yeah, really hard, going through court, and that really got me in touch with my pain. Because I'd always won at everything, been the best at everything, had, you know, aspired and climbed and done, you know, ticked all the boxes and been a good girl and done all that. And then suddenly, you know, the rugs, I found out he was having an affair, and the rug was pulled out from underneath me, and I had to face my pain. And yeah, so that was a really massive shift. Yeah.
What a way to put it. You know, you finally had to face your pain. And I'm really hearing here what a kind of grade A girl that you were, you know, really top of the class, even not academically, but in terms of like how you had worked hard and how you had pushed yourself, and, you know, how you'd been strong. I'm getting a real feeling of how strong you had always acted and had to be.
Yeah. Well, I'd had to be, because my parents were always fighting and, you know, very strong and opinionated. And so I had to be really tough in a way to survive. So I'm very resilient. And yeah, and then this happened, and yeah, but it was what I really needed. Absolutely what I needed to bring the yin and yang of life.
So you are there, so what will you be, sort of around 30, around then? Maybe
Yeah.
just around it, just a bit
Yeah,
younger.
27. Yeah, about just before 30, I think we went through all the divorce and everything. Yeah, which was really, yeah.
So, and also, just for anyone who is going through maybe that particular trial or that particular challenge, what would you say to someone who maybe is going through that right now, Julie Ann?
Oh my God, get a solicitor who deals in non-violent communication. Get a conscious solicitor, because all solicitors do is throw shit at one another so they can make more money and drag it out through court longer. Money for the boys, get a solicitor who is learn non-violent communication, so you can communicate and learn and grow together and see it as a healing opportunity. I had no idea about that. We just got into a massive battle and it was really painful. So that would be, and work with the breath worker to actually get in touch with the feelings that come up, rather than just throwing your shit at one another, which is how they make money, isn't it? Like, wind them up, throw the shit at one another and make money. So do it as consciously as possible. And
Okay, so I can really feel, that young woman, well, mother really, who really worked hard and done everything right. I'd really tried to do everything right, and yet still shit things had happened to her, and she's still going through a tough time. And I can really feel that the confusion that must bring. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah, but that was great, because that started. Yeah, why? I think actually, let me go back to being a Christian, and because this ties into it. So, C of E church, and then because I didn't pass my 11 plus, I went to a Catholic school because my mum and dad couldn't have me going to the, crappy comprehensive. So my uncle, who I think had a bit of money, I think he might have even bribed them, I don't know, my Uncle George, he got me and my cousin into the Catholic school. And so the only time I ever thought, oh, I'd really like to study that at university, was theology, because I was really intrigued with how can Christians believe in, like the body and blood of Christ, and Catholics actually believe in transubstantiation, these theoretical differences. So that was the only time I thought how that I would really like to study something. So then when I married into this family and married this guy who was clearly deeply damaged and wouldn't speak, wouldn't go to, he wouldn't come and have counselling with me, wouldn't work through anything, was in denial, didn't even think it was wrong to kill people. I was like, how can people think like that? Why do people? So all of this was sowing the seeds of wanting to understand humans, wanting to understand why people behave like they behave. Yeah. So it was almost like I was getting a training in starting to see behaviors and see how people play out the patterns. And yeah.
Okay.
That
seeds have been laid, but this was maybe the fertilizer, if you like, that actually started all those little things to germinate inside of you.
Yeah.
You. So, and that is a great gift, actually, to be able to recognize. And that's the marker for me, one of the truly great teachers when they can use their own suffering and their own hardships to transform themselves, and then others as well, and to bring the gifts and the gold that they learn through those difficult times to healing for themselves and for others. That for me is, that is what I feel is one of the greatest gifts that people can do, to bring out there. So amazing that you was how did that manifest then? How did that awakening start to manifest in your life?
How did
all of that awakening and that kind of realization and those questions, what happened next?
I had to go through much deeper pain first. That was the start of it, really.
Oh, great. Well, tell us about the deeper pain.
So then it was like, okay, so what happened then? There were a few neighbours that I started hanging out with, and I started smoking a bit of weed, and then I had my own business by then. I had my own interior design business where I was doing up houses and curtains and colour, and so I was already doing transformation. I think you mentioned that before. I was already like fashion business, taking fabric, transforming it into beautiful things. Then that changed into doing wedding dresses, and then that changed into doing up people's homes. So I was already doing that. And then I had a girl who came to work for me, who I'd shout at her. I'd like let all my stuff out and be like, because she'd done something wrong in the sewing room or something. And then I'd go into massive guilt and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And she'd be like, no, it's okay, it's not you. And she gave me this book, which is one of those really old books, I think, from the 70s, that's like, blame it on your parents or something. So this is the first time that I'd heard about patterns and stuff, so I started to read this, and then I started to read Kindred Spirit, and then I met a boyfriend who was really much switched on to this. I started to look at crop circles. And then a guy came in my shop, because I had this interior design shop, and started selling me interesting bits and pieces that I'd put in my window. And I had no idea he was a smackhead. I didn't know what a smackhead was. And he said, have you ever done a pill? And I was like, no, but I'll try anything once. Now, actually, there's another piece of this, because I would have never said that, because my family were like, you don't do drugs, you don't, you just don't go down that road. But I'd actually bought a crystal when I was on holiday in Greece, and this was Tibetan turquoise, and it was shouting at me from a window in a shop, and it was a lot of money, and it was just, crystals do that. It was like, buy me, Anyway, I bought it, and I realized what had happened. This crystal had activated a connection from my throat to my heart chakra and opened up that connection. So when I would normally go, no, don't do drugs, I'm not doing that. Instead, my heart was connected to my throat, and I just went, oh, I'll do anything once. And actually, he brought with him a picture of my first boyfriend when I was 10, who I was at Sunday school with, Tim Smith. He went, this guy? We're all going out partying together. So that was a big moment. That really shifted it. I went out, I did ecstasy for the first time, and that just blew my mind away. I feel like that had to happen to me to lock me. It was like the key to unlock me from this restricted, controlled, and enable me to start to stand in my power. But then it had a very dark side, because I got lost in that world for a while. Yeah.
And there's a lot in there, but for just to recognize that sometimes it does take something, like a drug, to be able to kind of take us out of our body into realizing something that is bigger than ourselves. And I know that for a lot of people in the 90s, myself included, that was one of my first transcendental experiences, if you like. And it was astonishing.
Oh,
never had anything like that before.
No, I mean, the first time I projectile vomited, I would faint, I fell over, I was like, shit, this is what drugs are like, I'm never taking them again. And then they looked after me, they took such good care of me. And then I came round and I was like, oh my God, can we do that again? That was amazing. Because I'd always, even through this time, I'd always been a dancer. I'd always been a disco diva and won disco dancing competitions. But the punks used to kick me up the arse because they were jealous of me. So the fact that I could actually dance and express myself and people look at me and be like, nice one, you're all right. Yeah, we're all right. It was like, whoa, I'm allowed to be crazy and everyone loves me for it. So yeah, that was the start of something great, but then it also had its shadow side.
Okay, well, before we go into how it went downhill, let's just have a breath with that kind of that realization. Yes, you're all right, and yes, you get to be a diva. Yes, you get to be appreciated. Yes, you get to connect to everyone, and how amazing that feeling is. So let's acknowledge that.
Yes, thank you. Blessings to the divas.
Yes, the divas. And if it's okay, are you okay to tell us how it went downhill from there?
Yeah, well, it went uphill and it went downhill. It's like, you know, I started to feel life more. That was good. I started to feel the highs, but holy shit, I started to feel the lows as well. So within a few months, I was putting on free parties in Macclesfield, put on massive parties. And that was, so yeah, so the good part of it was that it started my connection with God again. Because I would go out, I'd go all over the place on my own. I'd drive to Stoke, I'd drive to Leeds, I'd go partying on my own because I knew I'd meet brothers and sisters everywhere, you know. But I'd always go in the loo, take my pill and say a prayer because of all that Leah Betts thing was happening. And I didn't quite really know what was the truth, but I'd take a pill and connect with God, start asking to be taken care of. So that was the great side of it. I was then guided to put on these massive parties. So I gave birth to these freewheeling, they were called. People still talk about them now. So that was amazing and exhilarating. And I learned so much through ecstasy and later LSD. But I learned so much about all the spiritual teachings. So by the time I got to doing breath work, it was like I'd had all those downloads and all that information about stop looking for it. If you just trust, you'll find it, and all of those things. But the other side of it was that you have a high and whatever goes up has to come down. So there were the real lows from it as well. And then my ex took me to court, took my daughter off me, then my son got taken off me. So that was really hard. I lost my house, I lost my business, I lost my kids, I lost everything. Yeah. So yeah, there were the highs, but holy shit, there were the lows as well. And then I had to live with the guilt and the shame and that's then when I started looking for something else, you know. So, it took me a really long time like a whole year to get my son back. I made myself homeless. I moved into Manchester. I ended up literally with nothing, you know. In a few years, everything got taken off me. And in a way, that was really painful. Yeah, I can feel the sadness of that still. But it was like the tower in the tarot. Everything had to clear and shift so I could start from the pure essence of who I really was. So it's a bit like, I've just done it last week, cut a buddleia back in the garden. Cut it back really, really hard, and it's like I grew stronger from knowing who I really was, right back to the core. So it had to happen, you know. It had to happen.
Well, you know, we just had a breath with the joys of that. Then let's also have a breath to recognize the brutality of sudden change, of like transformational change, how it's not always easy, and how it can be life-changing in a way that can be terribly dark when you're experiencing it. Let's have a breath with that. And if you could go back and just have a word, a couple of words or a sentence to Julie Ann at that stage in our life, what would you say?
It's all going to be okay.
It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. So how was it okay then? What happened next? So you're in Manchester after having this big shake-up in your life where you've lost everything and you get a chance to build up again from the bottom. Tell us about how you did that and what that beautiful blooming tree looked like.
Do you know, though, even through that period of having nothing, I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that somebody did a post yesterday about my friend about finding a dartboard at the side of the road for her kids. And I'm like, do you know, when I had nothing, when I lived in Manchester and I was living off my £57.50 a week, I really appreciated everything because I had so little. And I'm so grateful for that. I would put out a manifestation list and I'd go walking my dogs and whatever I wanted would appear. You know, I started doing a stall at festivals and I got this market stall really cheap. And then I was like, oh, I need some black paint to paint it because I was selling all UV stuff. And I literally walked around the corner and the councillor had left it just for me, cans of black paint. And then I go around to my mates and say, hey, I'm looking for some black oh, we've just seen some fabric in a skip. Oh, so we were off over the fence in the skip. So everything I wanted manifested, even though I had nothing. So I'm so grateful for that, because if I'd have always had enough, I would never have really learned the pure magic of of that magic working, even though things were really crappy. So
okay, so I can see I can hear you picking yourself up, starting again, being exciting and entrepreneurial and adventuring. It's almost like you were a young woman again, having doing, you know, as you might do in your early 20s, kind of really starting out and growing in the world. Tell us where your adventures took you.
Yes, because it was the real me. I could grow then from really who I was, and that's what that opportunity gave me. So I was lucky. I ended up with social housing that was really nice, and I only had my benefits, but I was also had a little stall in clubs, and you know, that's where I was face painting and selling pills and doing all that. So I always had a little bit of extra money, but I knew that like the ecstasy and the LSD had opened me up to seeing the world, the beauty in the world and the amazingness of, you know, oh my God, the Fabricini and how everything's related, and we're amazing that we live and survive and we heal, and we, you know, all those amazing realizations about how just incredible the world is and humanity is, and taking it right back to the bare bones. So from that place, I remember sitting in chill out rooms in clubs with this prayer, this deep prayer: God, please show me how we can feel high like this forever. So that was one prayer. I also, when my daughter got taken off me, rage came up in my body, and I was covered in eczema. They said it was the worst eczema the doctors had ever seen. It was totally incurable, and I'd wake up itching. That was the worst. I think I just wanted to die, which is why I was then taking more ecstasy, because at least I could escape and feel better. But I remember saying this prayer: how can we feel good without taking anything? And also I'd started to realize that I was continually bringing in abusive relationships, and that was my pattern and my responsibility. So please show me how I can clear through that. Lots of my friends, I was on the psytrance scene, so lots of my friends were getting into healing and meditation, and I was like, holy you know, the amount of stuff that I've got to clear, it's going to take a lot more than meditation. So that was my show me what it is that I have to do to move beyond these patterns, to feel great. And literally one day I was in a bookshop in Oldham Street in Manchester. It's not there anymore. And I used to read a lot of David Icke. So I was like, oh, another David Icke book. Or what's this? This is interesting. Leonard Orr, Rebirthing in the New Age. I was like, all right, forget David Icke. I'm going to read this. I couldn't put the book down. I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. I knew it. That was it. And I went round to my friends for coffee, party friends. And I didn't even tell her. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. And she literally turned around and gave me the back of an envelope and went, oh, there's the name of that rebirther you wanted. I was like, I'm not even going to work out how that even happened. It's just one of those, because those sort of crazy things used to happen in that drug world, didn't they, all the time. So I started working with Christine McCallum, who very sadly just died before Christmas. And yeah, she was amazing. She took me through my 10 sessions. I would just vibrate with love and the tears and the anger and the frustration and all of the stuff that I've been holding on to. I could physically, literally feel it moving through my body and moving out. And I remember asking, where does it go? And composting into the earth. So it just was incredible. And that, I think, was the first time in my life that I'd ever really been held in really deep, unconditional love. And yeah, she changed my life massively, having those sessions, and really inspired me to, yeah, to do more.
And
yeah.
Christine, did you say?
Christine McCallum. And she was like the only rebirther in Manchester for years and years, and but really sadly died of cancer just before like the 11th of December. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we definitely need to have a breath with her, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Changing your life.
Yeah. I miss her loads. I'm really sad I didn't get to a funeral, so I'm making these series of training videos in honor of her this year. So yeah, amazing. So Christine McCallum then invited Christina Artemis from Bournemouth to Manchester to do a workshop, and Natalia Brown was at that workshop as well. That's the first time both of us had done a workshop. And yeah, that just blew my mind away, because I realized at that workshop that I had separation trauma. You know, my kids had left me, my dog had left me, my husband's everyone had left me. And then I realized it was this big pattern of love leaves me, you know. And so that first workshop was just mind-blowing for me. And Christina Artemis, who'd come up from Bournemouth, was a trainer and a teacher, and she was offering this amazing training, rebirthing. One training was rebirthing, the other training was drama, dance and voice therapy. And I was like, I want to do it all. This is amazing. But I had no money, no idea. So Christine took me through this process of just saying yes to the universe. And because I said yes, that was it. Everything fell into place. I met Paul Wonnacott, who's my youngest dad, and his family had just got a load of money, like by selling some land in Piccadilly. They paid for my training. They bought me a car, gave me money to. So it was like, because I'd said yes to what I wanted to do, all of this came in. And I took my daughter, Daisy, who's almost 18 now, I took her with me on that training as a baby, and she did the whole of the rebirth training with me, and I did the drama, dance and voice therapy, and that just opened my world. We did a lot of our training at Osho, at
Mm-hmm.
the Osho at Leela in Gillingham. And then I just started to mix with completely different people, my vibration raised. And then I moved to Bournemouth to work for Christina. Yeah. And lived in Bournemouth then for 10 years.
So when it happened quickly, and it happened full on. And what I'm hearing is that you were in a place, almost life had prepared you to kind of fully embrace it and to kind of fully go with it, and to be able to open yourself up and allow yourself to jump into the deep end, if you like.
Yeah, because I'd already done it. I'd already lost everything. So what else did I have to lose? It was, and what Christina taught was a lot of tarot with her training. So the Fool, the first card in the tarot, is just stepping out, not knowing what's happening, and trusting that God is going to lay those steps out for you. So I'd already done it once and let everything go, and everything was fine. In fact, things have got even better, apart from, you know, being separated from my daughter. Yeah, so yeah, I was just like, yeah, go for it. Amazing.
Okay, well, are you okay to go on a little bit longer? We've gone over our allotted hour, but you know, I would love to hear
Yeah,
the
sure.
next.
I didn't really think I could get it into an hour.
Yeah, they never do fit into an hour. So you started working as a rebirther down in Bournemouth for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm guessing the healing and the breathing and the transformation just wasn't about yourself. That's when you started to bring that out to other people as well.
Yeah, so I worked with Christina and helped her with her trainings. I used to go and run. We did the rebirth training, and then we also did goddess trainings, initiations, and I used to travel to France to do a lot of that. It was amazing, and Daisy would always come with me. And then but then Daisy's dad had been in prison, and so during also that period, that was really challenging. That had happened as well. And when he came out, me and him sort of got back into doing the festivals and the stall, and I got back into using recreational drugs a bit of the time. And then I saw what was happening and was like, oh no, I can't go back down that road. So me and him split up, and then I opened a shop, and I realized the shop was to lift my vibration. And so I opened a shop in Bournemouth. And that again was divinely guided. It just came in, just like I was divinely guided to put on the free parties. And I was like, what? I was guided to open this shop. My father had died, bless him, not long before that. And he'd guided me. He died right next to the Alhambra Palace. And I went into the Alhambra Palace after his funeral, and this energy came in and said, call your business Baraka. So I knew once I found the shop and Baraka means blessings in Arabic. Yeah. So I opened this shop, and it became like a vortex. It brought in lots of people. There were loads of people who in drug rehab in Boscombe. My friends came and joined me. We had a therapy centre. We had a spiritual art gallery, and I ran that for like 4 or 5 years. And then I realised I was really gagging to do more breath work, but I was so busy doing festivals, running the shop, that I didn't have time to do it. So then I got guided, right now it's time to do breath work full time. And so I closed the shop, and synchronistically I'd already started going to the IBF Global Inspiration Conference, breathwork conferences in 2008. And so that year, the conference was in Ecuador, and I'd seen all the videos for it the year before in Spain. I was like, oh my God. And then I closed down my shop, and my business mentor went, go, just spend the money. It's a business expense. I was like, oh my God. So I went off to Ecuador and I did the training, and then I went and did ayahuasca, and I went traveling and did loads of shamanic work. And then I really got guidance then to do breath work full time, and everyone at the JIC the first evening at dinner were transformational breath facilitators. So I signed up and I did the transformational breath training because then I'd got the money from this shop. So everything had been lined up divinely to support me on my journey to get where I needed to be. So
10 years was a rebirth, and then, you know, a big change in your life, changing your business, and then you became a transformational breath worker.
So and also, like, rebirthing was amazing. It saved my life, and Christina were phenomenal, but I never felt like it was like, I never felt really maybe ready in myself, or it wasn't such a high professional standard. And also because of all that stuff in the past of me never feeling a little bit stupid or not clever enough because of my dyslexia. So going to this higher level of training that is very professional and I feel like I really needed that personally for myself to really feel ready to really bring breath work to the world and do it full time. So then I organised for Sondra Ray in 2012, and I organised for her, and I brought her to Bournemouth, and Fiona Arrigo came to her workshops and offered me work, and I started working for her, and I completed my training, and now I do it full time. And just completely different person from when I first came here 20 years ago, like that, with my second husband going, oh, nobody talk to me and ask me how I feel, please, because I don't want to talk about that stuff.
Okay, so quite a journey, and there's, you know, quite a few big things you talked about there, like the IBF and, you know, the festivals and all the other things that you've done. So tell us, what does your life look like now as a full-time breathwork facilitator, having trained in rebirthing and transformational breath? What does your life as a breathwork facilitator look like now?
So now I'm still learning to have more space for myself. So having this lockdown for me is, on one level, an answer to a prayer, because I've been able to catch up with myself. You know, there's always a lot of paperwork and things as well, and admin, because I also run the training program. I do have a team of other people to help me with that now.
Yeah.
For a non-left-hand brain person, I've really had to train myself to be organised.
Yeah.
But my dad ran his own business. My grandfather was a manager of British Steel Factory, so that's in my DNA as well. So even though I'm dyslexic, I can do the organisational side of things. So I'm based in Glastonbury. I give sessions here. I run Breathing Circle here and in Bristol. I also work in Cardiff quite a lot because my mum has remarried and they have an apartment in Cardiff. So I started working in Cardiff, which is great. I live here now with my daughter, Daisy, and my son's also around, Fabian. He lives in a caravan right in a beautiful spot, you know, and has a great life. So Glastonbury is such a beautiful place. It's also amazing because it brings in people to Glastonbury to do the breathwork training, the transformational training that I run here with my colleague from Kenya, Vincent Olo. So we run that program here together, and it's so beautiful. I can go out of my door 5 minutes that way and I'm on the levels, another 10 minutes that way up the high street. I'm on the tour. It's just, it's a small town, so it's a beautiful community, you know, a bit like Macclesfield, everybody knows one another. And I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying being able to give back so much for this amazing, beautiful work, and inspiring people to transform their lives from wherever they are to wherever they want to go. And that doesn't have to look like my thing at all. Everyone's got their own unique journey where they're going, but it's just an honor to be able to support people to move forward to wherever they want to be.
It is a privilege to do this work, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is an honor without doubt. And I can see the joy in your face and the energy as you describe your life now. And you know, so let's just honor that, you know, I know it's been a difficult journey at times, but where you are now seems such an amazing place to be, and you seem really content to live in joy.
And great friends.
And not many people actually allow themselves to live in joy. And it's amazing when you do meet someone who does.
Yeah.
Let's have a breath with that.
So thank you. Yeah, it's gratitude.
So let's just do one last shout out. Is there someone who's inspiring you at the moment that you would like to bring in, that you would like to recognize or acknowledge?
Yes, absolutely. Judith Kravitz. Yeah.
Judith Kravitz.
Who is amazing. Her program and the training and everything that she gives. I've just done an online breath training this last week that is so detailed and such beautiful work, and the whole, the breathing analysis, that everything. I'm so grateful for the process, how it helps people, and how generous her training program is. There is so much in it.
Yeah.
And it's continually personal development. I'm continually working on myself, growing, finding out my glitches and projections. It's a continuous journey, and I'm really grateful for Judith for all that she's given. And
Okay, let's have a breath with Judith, and for all our teachers who inspire.
And all of them. Yeah.
And thank you for bringing Judith in here. So I've got one more question to ask you, Julie Ann, but also I sometimes ask breath work facilitators if they've got a favourite breath exercise that they would like to share with everyone.
Yeah, okay. So, I think I'd like to just do for our online sessions, we've really slowed down the breathing. So basically, what I'd like people to do is put a hand on your lower belly, right above your pubic bone, and just soften your body and take a breath into your lower belly. So as you breathe in, push your tummy out, and then relax the exhale. So we're doing a connected breath. No pauses in the breath, breathing into your belly. And then relaxing on the exhale. So not pushing the exhale, and no pauses, breathing into your belly. And I think what people really need right now, so keeping connecting your breath, pushing your tummy out on the inhale. Softening your shoulders, softening your face, just watching if you're frowning or if your shoulders are up, just really relaxing your whole body, breath in your belly. And and bringing you into safety. Grounding in your belly and knowing that with whatever's happening now, whatever the stories, everything's going to be okay. Let's have some breaths for transitioning into unity consciousness and a beautiful new world. Grounding, knowing that you're safe. Whenever you come to this place and breathe into your belly, connect your breath, relax the exhale, and keep the breath soft. Know whatever's happening in the world, you can always bring yourself to this place. Everything is going to be okay. And you can do this especially to integrate any fears as they come up. And totally letting thoughts go. So just letting the thoughts pass by like clouds. Not buying into any story or any drama. Just connecting your breath in your belly. Relaxing the exhale. Knowing that you're safe and well.
You're safe and well, and everything is going to be okay. Yeah.
More than okay.
More than okay. Everything's going to be more than okay.
More than okay.
So if people want to get hold of you, Julie Ann, and find out about your training or your sessions, how should they do that?
You can go to www.loveinthebreath. Yeah.
Love.
And I've got a Facebook page, Love in the Breath, and I've just created a YouTube channel. There's not much on it, but I've made a start. Yeah, so Love in the Breath. Yeah.
Love in the Breath, thank you. And perhaps you can post those in the comments on the Facebook feed as well.
Yeah, okay.
And then when we upload it to YouTube, by all means, paste your links underneath in the comments for the YouTube page as well. So
Great,
people
thank
can follow
you.
you there. So I've got one last question to ask you before we finish. We've talked about who has inspired you and the events in your life that have put you on this track, but what would you like to inspire in others, Julie Ann?
That if I can do this, anybody can, because I came from that Christian background, and then I had drug addictions, I had really challenging health problems that they said there was no cure, and I felt suicidal, and drug addictions and control, and I've broken through all of that. Find a breath worker and breathe your way to freedom.
If you can do this,
Anybody can.
Find a breath worker and breathe your way to freedom. That's a lovely thought to end on. Let's take one final breath together, Julie Ann. Thank you for being with us here today, Julie Ann.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.